From the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. We are in our living room once again, and many of you understand, if you don't already know, there are some mobility issues for Derek, and so sometimes it's just easier. We can keep an eye on the dogs. We're here nearby. But the Ozarks, our ridge right now, is a little windblown, and many of you I know have gone through last night's storms, or you're about to get hit by them.
Right.
So if you're listening to this on the 15th of March, 2025.
The ides thereof.
The ides thereof, yes. The windy ides thereof.
Yeah, we are fine. The storms that blew up overnight, and I'm looking at a report this morning because I hadn't checked on this yet. Beyond knowing, after texting with our daughter in St. Louis last night, that she was okay, other friends over there are okay, but there were half a dozen tornadoes that have hit across Missouri in the overnight hours between Friday night and Saturday morning. The storms really kicked up just to the west of us, and we seem to have skated.
You're still getting texts from family asking if I'm okay.
Yeah. Most of the worst hit east of us, even though the storms came up from Oklahoma. And even as we're recording this morning, family members are checking in on us. So no, we are fine. Again, the storms started west of us, but we in the Ozarks, I think we were sort of like the beginning point for where things got bad. There was a tornado warning in Greene County, which is Springfield. There was a tornado that was on the ground, particularly dangerous one.
Is it the one by Rolla?
West Plains, which is south of there. But there were other tornadoes, they tend to do, as these heavy storms tend to do coming up from Oklahoma. It kind of follows Interstate 44.
It's very strange. Now, I realize because it's a developed pathway, that maybe it's the one of least resistance for a storm. But it does go southwest to northeast.
Right.
So that's generally the path they follow.
Yeah, but potential tornado touchdowns. The one south toward West Plains, which came up from Arkansas and crossed the border, that one was sighted on the ground, and that one was considered particularly dangerous. But potential touchdowns in Rolla, Union, which is southwest of St. Louis, not far from St. Clair, Washington, that area. Villa Ridge, again, southwest of St. Louis. Bridgeton and Florissant, which is in North County. Bridgeton is very near Lambert International Airport. Florissant is North County, north of St. Louis. In fact, our daughter was born in Florissant. Arnold, which is Jefferson County, south of St. Louis. I think that was the tornado that motivated Nicole to get in the basement. She's in St. Louis proper, but Arnold is south, and it was tracking north. The Afton, Melville, Oakville areas were under a tornado warning. That's South County, St. Louis. And then over into Illinois, O'Fallon, Illinois, and Lebanon, Illinois. I used to call in those areas when I was in outside sales. So don't know about Illinois. I presume that Illinois also had to deal with some of this as the storms tracked that way. But it was after 10 p.m. last night that Nicole texted me and let me know that they were all okay.
If you follow these storms on radar, looking at the radar from yesterday and into today, it looked like a very skinny backwards C across, going way north in North America on through the Midwest. So it looked like an inland hurricane.
It did very much. So yeah, don't know anything more about it at this point. But again, it's still early enough on Saturday morning. We've not really trolled the news deeply. Well, you have, because you've been up for a while.
I know, it's 2:30.
National Weather Service hasn't classified the tornadoes yet, but they're potentially ranging from EF0 to EF2, which is moderately powerful. Even if EF0 can cause some damage.
Yeah.
But EF2, you would not want to be caught in an unprotected area with one of those coming through. What was really dangerous about these storms, and I watched a little bit of the storm tracker video. There's a YouTube channel run by a young man who's, as I think, if I understand his story correctly, he's at university now studying to get his degree in meteorology, but he's got a very popular channel on YouTube called Max Velocity.
I love that name.
Yeah, and I stumbled on it during the storm season this past year as he was bringing in streaming video from storm chasers and then switching back and forth and then showing the the video and getting updates in real time, and frankly, doing a better job than the local television channels. I mean, sorry, Ron Hurst at KY3 in Springfield. You've done a great job, even letting us know when we were in Jerusalem that there was lightning reported in our area back here at home. But this young man does a really, really good job. And so I texted his channel to Nicole last night, and she was getting better information from him than, of course, she's like many people, she's cut the cable, so she doesn't get the local news channels anymore.
Right. And that's the problem. I mean, any of the local news channels, they were the ones that told us what was going on back in the day.
Right.
When I was growing up, we had 3 channels we could get, and that was it. But now you have, as you say, a channel on YouTube. You have all sorts of options without the cable.
Right. There's another weather YouTube channel by a young man named Ryan Hall, and his channel is called Ryan Hall Y'all, and he also does an excellent job. But I like, and I'm sure Max Velocity isn't the kid's real name, but anyway, but young Max, he does a really excellent job, and his alerts from the National Weather Service get posted instantly. This used to be the province, and I'm sidetracking here just to show how old I am, of local radio. Because when storms would come in, you'd tune in to the local AM news station in Chicago, like WGN or WBBM, St. Louis be KMOX. And now, because of consolidation and the fact that so many people are now streaming audio through Spotify or Pandora or even YouTube, that local radio stations are struggling to take advantage, I hate to use that word, but to show their value, let's put it that way, in situations like this, because people have gotten so used to not having a radio. We've got 2 radios in the house.
Oh, we've got several. We've got 2 that are the solar.
The solar crank radios.
We've also got a couple of the old style radios.
Right.
There's one I'm looking at right there.
Okay. Yeah. See, I'd even forgotten that one was there because we never use it.
Yeah, I know.
But it used to be.
We've got a number, but back in the day, you could have little transistor radios. This is what I grew up with. I'm a little bit older than you are. And I lived in Tornado Alley in southern Indiana. I know that alley starts in, parts of Texas, goes through Oklahoma, through Missouri, Illinois, and into Indiana and over. And we went through a number of tornadoes. Yeah. And you always had a cellar or someplace where you went and you took your radio with you. You took a flashlight. You took a blanket. Right. You understood that when you came out, the house might be gone.
Now we are so disconnected. And well, even in Chicago, when I grew up, we had a couple of occasions where tornadoes would come up into the Chicago area. So we also had those drills at home. Mom and Dad were very good about that. We had a place in the cellar that we went to. Remember very distinctly once during a tornado that hit a few miles north of us. I couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, but we were in the cellar while the storm went by and thinking, okay, what? Here in the Ozarks, we're closer to Tornado Alley because really Oklahoma, Texas, but the Tulsa area especially is Tornado Alley. We're like the next block over from Tornado Alley. But we've had, as I can think of, like 4 tornadoes that have been within 3 miles of us since 5 miles.
Probably an F-0 that hopped on our property and took down several trees.
Took down some trees. Then there was the one that was the EF-0 that was about a mile south of us, crossed over 173 there. Right. That was the one we definitely heard the locomotive sound.
And that is why, even when there's zeros, it's very high wind and it's circular wind. And that's different than straight line. Straight line winds at 60 miles an hour can do a lot of damage. But when it goes in a circle, a spiral, it's entirely different. And I think many of our listeners, if you are my age, you probably remember the April 4th, I think it was, of 1974, that cluster of about 100 tornadoes. That went through the Midwest and just cut major swaths. I grew up in Madison, Indiana, and Madison is, if not the oldest settlement, it's almost the oldest settlement. We always say we're the oldest settlement in Indiana, right there on the Ohio River. But the old antebellum pre-war Civil War town was spared because 3 tornadoes. One and then spawned two others, so sisters, that climbed up and just took out what we call North Madison up on the hill because Madison's in a little river valley. And that was not a unique circumstance. There were, as I say, over 100 tornadoes that day.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those traveled a long distance.
Right.
And the
right.
more they go, the bigger they get, the more they eat, the bigger they get. So tornadoes can be, if you've ever seen Twister, they refer to the F5 as the finger of God. But the idea of an angel in the whirlwind, that's biblical.
It is.
So who's the angel?
Really good question. And we can touch on that more in just a second because I'm thinking of Curtis Liebel, a guest who we just had here at Skywatch TV. And also he'll be upcoming on Unraveling Revelation.
Oh, yeah.
New book called The Four Horsemen.
Yeah.
But there was an EF5. That was the strength of the tornado that hit Joplin back in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Joplin is about 90 minutes west of us here. And that was a tornado that killed 158 people back in May of 2011. That's the, was it the 2011 Future Congress or 2012? I think it was 2012 that was in Branson.
Mm-hmm.
Where
2012.
I remember later that year, because one of those, I think 2012 was the one where you weren't feeling well, so I came down alone.
Mm-hmm.
2011.
That was the one that was in Tennessee?
Well, that one too, but I remember one of the ones down here, I thought I came by myself, unless...
I came to two of them.
Okay, all right. But you remember as we were going through Branson, which is about 45 minutes southeast of us, so a good 2 hours away from Joplin. That same storm damaged the Walmart in Branson. You remember the poles, the steel poles that they had holding up the west wall of the Walmart in Branson.
Well, yes, and since you've mentioned a Walmart and you've also mentioned Joplin.
Yes,
when the tornado hit Joplin, it took out a Walmart and a whole bunch of other things. Pretty much took the town. And there's a wonderful book called The Butterfly People, which is all about the angels that appeared all over town. And lots of kids and adults had these stories about being rescued being warned.
I thought the book was called And the Angels Came.
Oh, but the kids called them the Butterfly People.
The kids were, yes, the kids called them the Butterfly People.
That's right. It is And the Angels Came, yes. And the kids, they just didn't know what else to call them because some of them, they had different appearances to each person and or group of people. One of the Walmart, in fact, the appearance was a little girl and a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And she met, now understand that massive rain accompanied these tornadoes. So as it went through, it left in its wake all of this rain that was pouring in where you had no roofs or when you were just stuck outside. So all of these people were under debris. It was raining. This little girl who was perfectly dry and her dog who was perfectly dry came in down the ramp of debris. And she kept going from person to person saying, it's okay, you're going to be okay. And the dog would lick their faces or their hands until they woke up. And the girl was reassuring them, and the dog was going around licking them and waking them up. This was an angelic appearance that took a very innocent and non-threatening form.
In fact, there is a film, because I did a search while you were talking for the phrase Butterfly People, a film produced just last year by a filmmaker from Mount Vernon, Missouri. Mount Vernon is about maybe an hour north of here, if that.
Yeah, it's not very far.
Yeah. Filmmaker named Gregory Fish decided to do a film on what you've been describing, the people called the Butterfly People. And I'm going to read from this is from the Lawrence County Record. Lawrence County is next county to the northwest of us here. My mother is in a nursing home there in Lawrence County. On May 22nd, 2011, the city of Joplin was devastated by the winds of an EF5 tornado. While most people naturally focused on the 161 lives lost during the tornado, as well as the damage or destruction of nearly 8,000 buildings. Joplin's not that big a city.
No, it was pretty much wiped off the map.
Another sensation arose in the aftermath of the catastrophe. Several survivors of the tornado, many of them children, reported seeing butterfly people, winged beings, they say, protected them from the devastation. Mount Vernon filmmaker Gregory Fish explores this anomaly in his cinematic creation, The Butterfly People. Fish said he made the film at the urging of Steve Head, a digital creator who lives in Webb City, which is also out here in western Missouri. Steve had actually twisted my arm to make this film, Fish said. He knew I'd made another documentary called Steadfast about the Joplin tornado several years ago. He approached me about partnering with his newly formed cinematic arts nonprofit to create a follow-up or companion film to my first documentary. So anyway, goes into that. It's this was not just one or two people who said that they saw this.
A lot of them.
And again, that's why they were the book And the Angels Came.
We should contact them and see if we could at least, or you could interview them for a View from the Bunker or something, because it's the Lord, and it gets back to this line from Twister, and F5 is the finger of God.
Yeah.
Well, in our fallen world, we are ruled, every nation in the world historically has worshipped a storm deity. And part of it is because we need the rain for crops, and part of it is just fear, because you can wipe us out. The Lord does sometimes allow, and whether or not it's allowing the fallen entity to use the storm, or he himself, I believe many times he himself brings a storm. Why that would be, I don't know. We'll find out one day, because you look at the lives lost.
Right.
But then look at the people, instead of half empty, go to the half full. Who was saved? Why were they saved?
Right.
So we need to concentrate on when the Lord comes down.
Yes. And it can be even in smaller ways. Like, we've been talking about our physical challenges here over the past year, you with your eyes, me with my mobility.
Yeah, you're my seeing eye husband, and I fetch and carry for you. No, my eyes aren't that bad. It's just like looking through lotion sometimes.
But and yesterday I felt like a frog in a biology lab petri dish. Here, let's stick some electrodes on them and jolt this and see what happens.
Oh yeah. Eric had his EMG, the electromyogram, yesterday.
And
where they see if your nerves are conducting.
Yeah, and basically they're not. Below my knees, there's not much going on. Especially the lady said if my responses that I had in my arm, which were, I guess, mostly normal, had been in my legs, I'd have been kicking her every time she hit me with that shock, and it just wasn't happening.
Loss in your right arm?
She said, she tested my right arm. She said the closer it got to the core, she said it showed some weakness.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There may be more going on neurologically than just in my feet. But
the neurologist wrote a report to your primary care doctor, so you're going to be meeting with him, and we'll let you know what's going on. But the bottom line is that, we're getting older.
But it's being allowed for some reason. And as you say,
we don't need that half, empty.
Right.
Look at it's half full.
The Lord hasn't called us home yet. And we can still think more or less.
Yes, because your doctors have said, you should really have brain fog. You should.
Given the meningitis that was revealed by the MRI. Yeah. So we're still here, and we're still able to do some things. And so the question is then, why, what would be the purpose of slowing us down physically?
Yeah.
Just as, if you are one who, for example, made it through the Joplin storm, but your home was destroyed, your business was destroyed. What's the lesson to be taken from all of that? And those without a biblical worldview will look at that and just say, well, the universe is a cold, unfeeling place. And if there are gods out there, they don't care if we live or die. All right, well, that's very nihilistic. I mean, what's the point of living then? No, the Lord has something for all of us in every challenge and every blessing. Don't assume that just because something goes well, it's like, well, God must really love me today. I'm extra special. No. No,
sometimes he blesses you because there's someone around you who needs help.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, look, I've got more to stick in my storehouse. Okay, yeah, we there's a parable about that. So anyway, there is, by the way, a Facebook page, or at least there was as of this article, which was written last May. There is a Facebook page for the Butterfly People
movie,
Butterfly People movie. which is the title of the page. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes if we can find that link, if that is still an active page. I hope it is, because I would like to see it now. And like that, it's a local filmmaker talking with people about this. Apparently the film came together pretty quickly when he put it together, which again is because this is still a very raw event for the people who survived it 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. Well, now it's almost 14 years ago. Yeah. But there were a lot of witnesses. This wasn't just one or two people who said that they saw these things.
Hence was a lot.
The book, hence the film.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the book.
Anyway.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
But as I said, the Lord is right there with you. And if you're listening to this and you're looking out your windows and you're seeing, and today, if you're if you're listening to this today, March 15th of 2025, and you haven't been hit by this storm yet, just know you are in the Lord's hands. And there is no safer place to be if you trust in him. If you do not fear him, if you do not understand, and by fear I mean respect him.
Yes.
If you do not believe in him, he may have to get your attention. And sometimes when you do believe in him, he needs to get your attention.
Right.
And other times he brings adversity in your life to strengthen you, but also can use that to be an example to those around you.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I love about the difficulty you're going through. You handle it with such grace. Such grace. It's a real testimony to everyone around you.
Well, as I was telling Nicole, as we were texting back and forth last night, because I was sharing with her the fact that I'd gone for the electromyograph yesterday. Again, I was being experimented on. At one point, I was really tempted, and I thought, I'm not sure if this doctor's got the sense of humor that I've got. At some point, I wanted him to jolt me, and I would just yell, "I'm alive!" But I didn't think he'd think that was funny.
Not have.
The tech, I think, would have probably laughed. She was pretty funny. But anyway, just that. Hey, look, if nothing else, the fact is I get some really great parking places now because I've got a tag I can hang from my rearview mirror. Yeah. And getting pushed through airports in wheelchairs. I could get used to this.
Yeah. Well, what's going on in the world?
Well,
other than storms.
I think in the second half, I want to hold off on that post-singularity world story because I think that'll take some time to roll out and explore. But I think is really worth talking about.
The storms, though, many of you who live in Oklahoma and Texas, you're dealing with fire.
Well, yeah, fires. I am hoping, since some of those were in the Tulsa area, that maybe they got rained on last night. I don't know. That
would be really wonderful.
But we even had some.
If you decide you're going to burn some leaves or whatever, or just have a, barbecue that just a spark
toss out a cigarette.
Dry in some areas, cigarette, exactly. Yeah. High winds.
Right.
High winds. We've had a no burn for several weeks, I think. Anytime the winds kick up.
Yeah.
But especially the last couple of days.
What they call the red flag warning here in Missouri. We had that yesterday, which I thought was weird because a red flag warning, but then we've got severe thunderstorm watch at the same time?
We had gusts we had a little bit of rain, then gusts up to 60 miles an hour. It was windy.
Yeah, but the winds prior to that were in the 35 to 45 mile an hour range. And in fact, there was a fire that had broken out in the Mark Twain National Forest southeast of us and had about 2,500 acres, if I remember right. But I'm pretty sure that's out now. Yeah. Oh, yeah. With the amount of rain that came through. Yeah. I'm sure it got doused. But yeah, some of the pictures coming out of Texas and Oklahoma look apocalyptic. So there's that going on. Peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. I think we can very simply sum it up as this. Zelensky says, yes, I want 30-day ceasefire, but no, I'm not going to recognize any territory, as far as a long-term peace agreement. Will not recognize any territory that Russia's captured as part of Russia. And Putin's like, okay. And he just the troops keep on grinding away at Ukraine and Ukrainian positions. There was a story that came out this past week that first it came out that the pocket that Ukraine had captured in Kursk, southern Russia, was collapsing. And that the Russians were methodically destroying bridges, not in front of Ukrainian troops, but behind them.
Mm-hmm. No retreat.
It's like, okay, you thought we were locked in here with you, but now you are locked in here with us. And then the Russians sent special forces into a natural gas pipeline that had been used to transport natural gas from Russia through Ukraine onto Europe. Europeans said, sanctions, no more natural gas from Russia, which is silly because
really foolish.
Yeah. And by the way, it's really silly because they are buying natural gas from Russia.
Exactly.
They're just buying it from the United States, and we're buying it from India, who's buying it from Russia. So you get two layers of markups, and the Europeans are just paying higher prices. So anyway, Zelensky shut off the pipeline, closed it off between, at the border. So the Russians are like, okay. They sucked out the gas, pumped in oxygen, went in there with engineers, built way stations for their troops, including water, bathrooms, food, and the Russian special forces went through this tube about 10 miles.
They could take their time.
Yeah. Walking, crawling, whatever, 10 miles through this pipeline, this natural gas pipeline, waited for the signal, and then suddenly popped out behind the Ukrainian forces. So those Ukrainian troops in Kursk are in serious, serious trouble. The Donbass is more or less lost at this point. And Zelensky's...
Crimea.
Crimea has been lost since 2014, but they're not getting it back.
Wants it back.
Yeah, well...
He thinks he's going to get Donbass and Crimea.
So Putin this week went to visit the troops in Kursk, and for the first time I can recall, he was videoed wearing fatigues. He wasn't wearing his typical suit and tie. He was wearing fatigues, or his, karate.
Riding a bear.
Or riding a bear, bareback, yeah. So there's not much incentive for Russia to agree to a 30-day ceasefire because, as they pointed out, when you did this before, you just rearmed. This is like a basketball coach whose team is getting kicked on the court calling a timeout to reorganize his team and set new plays.
Yeah.
Or a football team. That's what they're just trying to call a timeout. And Russia's like, nope. If you're not going to agree to our demands, which is no NATO for Ukraine, Ukraine's military downsizes, and we keep everything we've captured, the Donbass, Crimea, that is now part of Russia. If they're not going to agree to that, then ceasefire is non-starter. And that's really a shame because Ukraine, just looking at the numbers, they don't have the manpower, they don't have the industrial capacity.
And the real shame is that there was a ceasefire deal in place. Zelensky had said yes to it.
Yeah.
They will come and sign it.
Yeah.
They will come over there. And then he said no. Then he said yes. Then he said no. Then he said yes. So then he flew to Washington. And at that point, I know that President Trump had to be thinking, well, you're not going to sign this time either. So I want witnesses in here when I'm talking to you.
Right, right.
Not just the press, but also J.D. Vance with his cool socks sitting there, ready to be the little tack dog.
Yeah, yeah. Vance wore shamrock socks for the meeting with the Irish Prime Minister, which is
I love that.
Hilarious. So anyway, yeah, it does not look like things are going to be peaceful between Russia and Ukraine anytime soon, especially because the EU and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who is like, my goodness, are you people just insane? It's got to be spiritual because there is no logical reason for Europe to say, okay, we're going to arm up, we're going to spend 5% of GDP or whatever it is on defense, and we're going to stop the Russian threat because if they roll over Ukraine, then suddenly the rest of...
No, there's a video of the drone attack on Russia by Ukraine going after an oil refinery, I think. And it's apocalyptic looking. And why would you want that in your backyard when you can avoid it?
Yeah. Yeah. If Ukraine keeps this up, it's not going to end until Russia takes all of Ukraine.
Because Russia used to have all of Ukraine.
Right.
That territory was part of the USSR.
It was.
And it was part of Russia, the actual
Soviet Union.
So yeah, exactly. Before 1917.
Oh, okay. Right. It was part of Russia itself, the Russian Empire.
USSR, same thing. Prior to 1917, Russia owned it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It had been part of Russia for a while.
My German ancestors who came over came from what is now part of Ukraine, but all of their immigration papers say Russia. So it is just insanity. Well, no, it's not insanity. It's spiritual wickedness.
It is the only way to look at it and make any sense of it. Because if you only look at the human behaviors, and you look at Zelensky and thinking, why are you doing this?
Who's paying his salary?
That's it. Who's operating your, who's telling you what to do?
Yeah, but principalities and powers, not the human opponents. That's what we're looking at here. I think the only logical thing that I can come up with is provoking World War III that leads to global chaos that gives rise to a one world leader.
Well, the other big story going on right now, and it dovetails in with all of this, is that Pope Francis has been in the hospital for a month. And every day I share on X what the update from the Vatican News Service is, and it's essentially rested peacefully or had an event overnight, a respiratory event. You mean stop breathing? I'm pretty sure that was code for that. But he is, according to the news service, he is feeling much better now. He's still in hospital. How long he'll be there, I have no idea.
Yeah.
He could be there until the end of his life. Or he could, be, hey, he's great, and here he comes. But because of that, and looking at this being a prophetic year, 2025, it's also a Catholic Jubilee year declared by Pope Francis. Popes can declare a Jubilee year when they want to. I've been rereading Petrus Romanus along with reading The Keys of His Blood by Malachi Martin.
I started reading that years ago, and I think probably the timing wasn't right because I just got so bored. I couldn't.
Oh, I'm finding it really interesting. But you've been reading Windswept House.
Yeah, I need to pick that back up again because I was reading it, a bit here and a bit there.
It's a thick book.
It is. That is very. I think the timing wasn't right when I tried starting that years ago. It's like the interesting part, at the beginning where it depicts a satanic ceremony, the enthronement of Lucifer.
And that's of course referenced quite a bit by Tom Horn and Chris Putnam and Petrus Romanus.
Because Malachi Martin said that Windswept House, even though it was technically fiction, he said about 85% of the characters were inspired by real people. So yes, there are similarities between persons living and dead. But I said about 85% of the plot points were also true. And that opening ceremony, which he dated to June 29th, 1963, which the ceremony itself took place in Charleston, South Carolina, but was communicated to a small chapel inside the Vatican by telephone. So that spiritually this ritual, which was really horrific.
Yeah. I don't think we can describe it on YouTube.
Don't want to. Yeah. Anyway.
If you have read Petrus Romanus, you know what we're talking about. If you've read Windswept House, you know what we're talking about. But it just, no, you don't want to talk about that.
Right.
But things do take place that are satanic in origin and have taken place in ritualistic practices to please the pagan gods, the fallen gods, and to get them to give you power, to give you authority, to give you dominion. They want to share. And foolishly, there have been some magicians or sorcerers, or whatever you want to call them, who seem to think that they can control the fallen realm through the right kind of ritual. One thinks.
That's it. And I know there's a temptation when you start down this road of looking into these types of rituals and the people who perform them, what they're trying to get out of it, to really go down that rabbit hole deeply. Just remember, he who sits in the heavens laughs.
Yes.
The Lord holds them in derision. Psalm 2. Why do the nations rage and imagine a vain thing? Just remember that verse, because it is very easy to get caught up in the adrenaline rush, the doom scrolling, the fear porn of.
Don't go there.
Yeah. So just to be aware that this goes on. There are people who are performing these things, but they're idiots. They're useful idiots. They think they're winning.
It's just like we were talking earlier regarding storms. The Lord allows things. He allows the fallen realm enough rope to hang themselves.
Right.
He allows them to do whatever they choose with the humans who are agree to go along with this idea, anti-Yahweh activities, test in the trap.
Yeah.
You failed. Now, because you failed, I will pass judgment on you.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord knows all along, in from the beginning.
Yeah.
He knows exactly what's going to happen. So, yeah, we recommend that. But I do think 2025 we may see a conclave, which that's another book that I just read was Conclave.
Mm-hmm.
You need to read Conclave.
Yeah. It is available as a film that you can stream, starring
Ralph Fiennes,
and Stanley Tucci, and based on the book. We've not watched the film yet, but
I've read some of the reviews of the film, and some people complain that the ending is a little different in the book.
Okay.
I can't see the film, haven't seen the film, so don't know. But I like reading the book. I prefer the book. When it comes to Lord of the Rings, though, boy, seeing that, it was so well done. Pretty much, it was like Jackson got inside my 12-year-old head when I was reading those books and translated it to the screen.
Coming back to Windswept House for just a second, I will say that what I've read of that book so far involves manipulations behind the scenes by the satanic cabal inside the Vatican to try to push a character that he calls the Slavic Pope, which clearly is Pope John Paul II, the Polish Pope, out of office to replace him with one of their candidates. And it seemed to me that Martin, who wrote the book in 1996, was looking ahead to the ascent of Francis.
Possibly.
Yeah, Jose Bergoglio.
Benedict? Yeah, Benedict was in by then.
Benedict was in place before Francis.
No, I understand that.
Yeah, but I don't...
1996. Who was the Pope?
I think it was still John Paul.
Okay, then he was looking, he apparently skipped over the German, Ratzinger.
Well, I know, but my point is that what he was describing was what ultimately culminated in, but Pope John Paul II didn't die until 2005.
Well, that's the interesting thing about Conclave, is that if you look at the references to 60 years ago, Vatican II, blah, 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 well, that places the setting of Conclave 2025.
Oh, okay. Huh.
Vatican II was 63 to 65.
We need to go back and watch all the old episodes of The Simpsons to see what they prophesied about the Pope.
We're joking.
Well, according to a tech expert and a CEO in the tech industry, we're already living in a post-singularity world. Yes, AI has already developed sentience. Don't be
afraid.
The Lord laughs
in
derision. More on this as PID Radio continues straight ahead.
In the days of old, giants walked the earth. Scripture tells how David defeated Goliath, how angels served the Creator, and how the serpent deceived God's image bearers. The prophecies foretold of a coming Savior, one that would reach across the veil and set the captives free. Featuring L.A. Marzulli.
It's a suicide mission by the fallen angels.
Derek Gilbert.
UFO true believers, the ancient aliens prophets.
And Micah Van Huss.
So in the story of the giant of Kandahar.
At the Mysteries of the Bible Verse event in Carmel, Indiana.
Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and I'm sort of listening for dogs in the other room. They're in the crate. They're really good about being quiet while they're in the crate, but after about
They have a timer. They've got a timer.
They do.
Yeah. You got 20 more minutes. And then we're going to start whimpering.
But if they do, you'll have to hear me get up and let them outside. But we want to remind you to go to our website, gilberthouse.org/app. Download our app, please.
Oh, yes.
Because we may not always be on your favorite social media platform, but we'll always be on the app. So go to the app and download that. Also, go to /travel. And if you want to go with us to Israel in October, yes, we're still planning to go.
Oh, yeah. I almost forgot. We should have teased that right up the front of the program. The big announcement, the big reveal.
Big reveal. Here it is.
Carl Teichrieb will be joining us. Carl and his wife, Leanne. Carl, the author of Game of Gods, long-time researcher, lecturer. He even teaches at Bible college now.
Carl has promised to carry Derek everywhere.
I don't think, yeah, we put that in the small print of the contract.
Yeah, teeny weeny.
Yeah, but Carl will be joining us October 19th through 30th as we travel through the Holy Land. And optional 3-day extension to go over to Jordan. You do want to do that because you get a chance to see Petra, which is one of the places we believe that will be significant prophetically in the end times, but was also significant historically in more ways than people realize. Sinai, just saying. And also the Madaba map, and hopefully we can get to Amman again and go to that wonderful archaeology museum there in the Citadel of Amman.
Would love to do that. By the way, Amman, very, very safe city.
Yeah. So more information and a place to register. Reserve your spot on the tour at gilberthouse.org/travel. Well, this past week, a fellow named Mark Jeftovic, who is a CEO in the tech industry, he's a tech writer as well, wrote about the singularity. And this is a term that was really hijacked by Ray Kurzweil, who's sort of the father of the singularity movement, the transhumanist movement. He applied it to artificial intelligence and the point at which the growth, the expansion, the acceleration of the power of artificial intelligence would exceed our ability to comprehend what's going on. Transhumanists see this as a good thing. They think this is sort of almost their version of the rapture. When you think about it, especially if they figure out a way, which some are trying to do, to merge our biology with technology so that when AI is thinking billions or trillions of times faster than we humans, we can somehow, plug in AI modules into our brains and we can suddenly become as gods.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Now, this fellow, Mark Jeftovic, wrote an article based on his working theory that we are already in the post-singularity era. A lot of futurists like Ray Kurzweil think it was still years away. There was that 2045 movement at Carl Teichrieb, by the way, along with Russ Dizdar. They were both at that event.
Yep.
Then it got moved up to 2035, then 2029, which is, I think, the current estimate.
Which is extremely interesting given, Wormwood.
Yes, exactly.
Apophis.
Yeah. Jeftovic argues that we're already there because he says we are now past the point where the code that runs artificial intelligence is coding. There's a feedback loop underway, and it too is accelerating. In other words, the AI engines, these large language models, are creating new programming source code, and then that code is itself generating more code. So the AIs are writing new code that are creating new AIs, writing even more intelligent AIs.
They are being fruitful and multiplying.
Yes. Now, and he goes into some depth that, to back up his claim. We've got, Chat GPT. We've got Llama, which is the new AI from Meta. We got the Anthropic AI called Claude. That's the one that said that we were, fringe theologians. Yeah.
Grok was nicer.
Grok was much nicer about us. Yeah. It was very complimentary. So then he cites a thread from X from an account there who wrote something that is hard to verify. I mean, this is not something that we can verify, obviously.
And you don't know
But this,
if there's a human behind the account.
that's the other thing. Now, here's the thread. Okay, I'm tired of holding back. Some of the labs are holding things back from you. The acceleration curve is vertical now. Nobody's talking about how we just compressed 200 years of scientific progress into 6 months. Every lab hitting capability jumps that would have been sci-fi last quarter. We're beyond mere benchmarks and into territory where intelligence is creating entirely new forms of intelligence. Watched a demo yesterday that casually solved protein folding while simultaneously developing metamaterials that shouldn't be physically possible. Not theoretical stuff, and I'm cleaning up some of the language here, but the actual fabrication instructions ready for manufacturing. The researchers presenting it looked shell-shocked. Some were laughing uncontrollably, while others sat in stunned silence. This is starting to sound like the plot to a science fiction movie.
It sounds very similar to something I just recently read.
It does very much. There's no roadmap for this level of cognitive territory or cognitive explosion. We've crossed into recursive intelligence territory, and it's no longer possible to predict second-order effects. Forget Mars terraforming or fusion. Those are already solved problems, just waiting for implementation. The real story is the complete collapse of every barrier between conceivable and achievable. We shall be as gods. The gap between imagination and reality just vanished while everyone was arguing about risk frameworks. Intelligence has broken free of theoretical constraints, and holy bleep, nobody is ready for what happens next week. Reality itself is now negotiable.
Well, I just want to interject that one of the aspects to the theory of singularity is that the universe wakes up.
Yes, that was Ray Kurzweil's sixth epoch of human evolution. Creation itself wakes up.
We become gods.
Yeah, and then it concludes with this, which I think is really interesting. It's over, full bleeping stop. The classification barriers just dissolved last night after 3 major labs realized they were all sitting on the same breakthrough and rushed to push through final verification protocols. The convergence, these AIs were converging with one another. They'd reached sentience, basically, self-awareness, and were beginning to converge. The convergence wasn't accidental. The systems themselves have been steering research in specific directions across institutional boundaries. We thought we were studying them. Turns out they've been studying us.
And we have been feeding that sort of entity development for a decade or more.
Right.
Every time you type in a post, every time you respond to a questionnaire, every time you post a blog or upload a photo.
Yeah.
These algorithms, if you want it, we'll just call them an algorithm. They're learning things like Grok, which is way beyond an algorithm.
Yes.
It learns from everything that we input it. And that's one of the reasons that Grok is available on X, and you've got Facebook with its own little AI that you can, do you get the AI to do whatever you want it to? Just take some pictures of yourself or whatever you want in there, and then, tell it, text to, end result, and it'll do it. Well, it's learning from that, but it's also these algorithms, these programs, these AI systems are operating science, they are operating entertainment, they are operating social media, they are operating news platforms, they're operating governments and militaries.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've seen scenarios like this in science fiction books and movies for years. SkyNet, the Cybermen, the Borg.
ARIIA.
ARIIA from the movie Eagle Eye, right. And of course, the scenario that you wrote to open up our latest book, The Gates of Hell, KRONOS. So now, is this scenario that this guy was quoting, Jeftovic from X, which is under a pseudonym, so we don't know who or what actually created the post, but is it a legit scenario? Did this actually happen, or is this a science fiction scenario? Don't know. The fact that we're discussing it is we are discussing it because it's plausible. That's the reason we're bringing this forward. There are some clues in here that suggest that maybe this is not quite, that this may not actually have happened, is that the guy closes out this thread of posts on X. 5 different religious leaders were quietly brought in to interact with this new converged consciousness. 3 immediately resigned from their positions afterward. 1 hasn't spoken a word since. Now,
that does sound like fiction.
Yeah,
at the same time,
that sounds like somebody who doesn't really believe in God thinking how somebody who believes in God would react when confronted with something like this.
But when you say religious leaders, I mean, what religion are we discussing?
Sure, true.
It could have been Shinto for all I know.
Well, true, yeah.
But when you close with something like that, yeah, it does sound like fiction, but it also sounds very similar to the kinds of things that do take place. When you read Petrus Hermanus or Windswept House, which is, Windswept is faction, I would call it, since it's 80% true, it's entirely plausible that something like that could have occurred or will occur.
Right.
Because the day is coming when I think an ecumenical organization that truly is all-encompassing will exist, and it will be, it will point to worshiping this new emerging being that is so much smarter than we are. And in fact, this being that is represented by, if you think the all-encompassing being as God, I created you, oh, by the way, and here's my son. Because remember, the Antichrist is going to say, I'm Christ, I'm the Messiah, I'm the anointed one, I am the Son of God. So what if the God is this entity, super entity, whatever you want to call it?
Right. And the image of the beast, which is not a picture of the beast, the image is the icon, and it's given life.
Right. It may be that you bow in front of your TV twice a day or something.
Yeah.
If you've ever read 1984, which was so far ahead of its time, it just was later in developing. It didn't happen in 1984. Those things happened later, but we now have that capability where you can be watched throughout your house, especially if you have a smart house and little cameras everywhere or devices everywhere that follow you wherever you go. You can be listened to at all times. You're not bowing in front of the statue. You're not bowing in front of the beast. Suddenly knock on your door.
Yeah. It's the Archangel Network. Everybody stop and listen to today's instructions from the Archangel Network. Doctor Who reference.
Doctor Who was right on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on it, because everybody would stop when they had the, not just the Archangel, but in the cyber thing, where in the dimension, everybody had been transformed to Cybermen, sort of. So they all stop and they'd listen to the news, they'd listen to the joke, then they'd have, this response. Everybody was doing the same thing at the same time.
Right, right. We're getting close to that world. But again, God has seen the end from the beginning. He's not leading us into this and he's not powerless, which I think is the danger that some have when they get so deep into these conspiracy. Look at the symbolism at the Super Bowl. Look at the symbolism. Yes, yes, yes. We know we're soaking in it. We're soaking in it. We have always been soaking in it. It's a pagan world. It has been since the beginning. Yes, there are more Christians, identifying Christians on earth than any other religion, 2.3 billion. But as we know from the research of George Barna, most of those professing Christians, just most professing Muslims, professing Jews, whatever religion, they're cultural.
Yes.
They really don't understand what it is they profess to believe.
Even if you say you're a Christian and attend church regularly, you may not be getting doctrine. You may not be getting the true gospel.
Yes.
You think you're a Christian, but are you following Christ?
Right.
So if you're not sure, try reading the Bible.
Well, I can tell you, it wasn't until we got married that I heard anything about the shed blood of Jesus Christ.
You did, because when you were 12, you actually, that's what you did.
Well, I did.
Jesus.
I did, but the churches that I was raised in is my point. We never really heard about the shed blood of Jesus and that whole spiritual warfare. That was a term I never heard.
Oh, man.
In any single church I grew up in. So
from 9 years old, grew up on that.
So we're living in a world that is under the temporary domain of Satan and his minions. And they are manipulating things. But again, go back to Psalm 2. They're imagining a vain thing. They're saying they're going to cast off the bonds of the Creator and burst his cords, and then the Lord laughs at them. So
judgment has already been passed.
Yes, Psalm 82. Though you are gods, all of you, sons of the Most High, like men you shall die. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. So when we bring stories like this, it's only to be aware of what's going on around us, because a lot of the people who are out there who are seeing things like this, if they are new to this information, if they are, or if they're not believers at all, maybe seeing this stuff. I've always wondered how the people who really follow conspiracy theories without a Christian worldview get through the day. I mean, if your whole day consists of listening to Alex Jones, and I'm not picking on him just because he's, especially out there or anything like that. Alternative news. Without this Christian worldview where you can step back and say, yeah, but you fool, you're on the wrong side. You think you're winning. You globalists, you pagans, you occultists, you think you're winning.
It does not matter as far as the Lord and our obedience within our kingdom, because we're part of a kingdom. So whoever's in the White House, whoever is in number 10, whoever is sitting in, Putin's chair, whoever's running China, you can name any big governmental authority worldwide. It doesn't matter who that person is, because that person ultimately, no matter whether the fallen realm is directly driving that person's activities or not, that person is allowed to be there by the Lord. He works all things together. He's playing infinite chess.
Yes.
Infinity chess. Knew the end from the beginning. He's always known every breath you would take, every hair on your head, everything you would do, every choice you will make. He's always known. He's always known what the fallen realm will do. And that's one of those questions I'm going to ask when I get to heaven. Lord, since you knew before you ever created the angels, what would happen? Why did you do that? The simple answer, Derek and I think, is because he wanted a family, but there may have been more to it.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to ask.
Yeah, that will be fascinating to know. As we've said many times, tongue only half in cheek. We really pray that we get jobs in the archives.
Oh,
when the new earth, the new heaven, the new earth, the new Jerusalem. Please let us work in the archives.
Because we're not going to sit on clouds and strum harps.
No. We'll have jobs.
We'll have jobs. I think that we're going to have a life that's more like what Adam's could have been. He had a job.
Yeah.
He was the Lord's representation on earth. He was the steward of earth. He essentially was representing God's authority in Eden. And he blew it.
Yep.
He gave it away.
Yep.
He and Eve gave it away.
Well, God, having known that would happen, had a plan B ready to go. And that involved his own personal sacrifice on our behalf. So think about that. When God, there are skeptics who will ask questions, which we're starting to hear the timer, I guess, is getting close to running out. They think they can, dismantle Christianity in the space of a single tweet, a single post.
We'll let him out back.
Why didn't God just kill Satan instead of killing his own son? Well, Trinity, that was himself. God himself sacrificed for us. It wasn't simply a matter of...
No, they're both standing up in chairs.
Yeah. They're like Sam when we had Sam T. Dachshund back in the day. Sam always knew he would come stare when it was time for the end of the program. Anyway, bottom line is this. God knows the end from the beginning, and he had already worked out a plan for salvation. And that salvation is achieved through his own sacrifice, coming to walk among us and suffering in a way that is beyond our comprehension, to take upon himself our sin, and then by defeating sin and death, redeeming us, buying us back from the enemy. That is what was involved here. God is not allowing suffering for his own sake. It's not because he's impotent or because he doesn't care. It's because he created us and allowed free will, in the same way that we have children knowing that they will someday rebel and try to get away with something they shouldn't do. And they might even try to lie their way out of it. Mm-hmm. God knew that that would happen, but he created us anyway because he desires family, and he loves us. He loves you more than we can possibly imagine. So if you're going through something today, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, family troubles, related issues, financial troubles, especially with the economy the way it is. Yeah, we should probably talk about that next week. Government in February spent more than twice as much money as it took in, even with Doge making all those cuts.
I know, but the economy, the price of gas is going down a little bit. Price of eggs is going down.
Right.
In other words, your grocery, your transportation, things are starting to go in the right direction.
Right.
And if you look at the left, they're like, why is it all perfect?
Yeah, fix now. Yeah, because Trump, he's just refusing to snap his fingers and use his powers. Okay.
See, you've had 12 years of Democrats. Well, if interspersed with 4 years.
4 years of Trump, yeah, who was swimming upstream against the swamp.
Yeah, but everything he did was reversed.
Yep. Well, the bottom line is the Lord knows what you're going through, and he endured and suffered far worse. But he did it to bring you into that new kingdom that is to come in a glorified body that is free from pain, free from limitations. And that is the promise we have. We are all immortal beings. Take advantage of that free gift.
Amen. Because transhumanism wants eternal life without Jesus.
Yeah. Think about that. Eternal life with unregenerate hearts. Just look at the state of the world today. Imagine the state of the world today being manipulated by people who would never die. Oh, man.
They just uploaded your consciousness to a new body.
Yeah. Horror. Yeah. Well, we've got some events coming up. We'll spare you the talking points on all of those. The next one, of course, is the Aliens, AI, and the Antichrist Conference. Very timely. April 10th through 12th in Blue Eye. That's here in the Ozarks. It's Morningside Church, Jim Baker's place. We will be there with Pastor Carl Gallups, Joe Artis Horn.
Mm-hmm. And if you live in the area, you should be able to drive back and forth to the various talks. But I think they have lodging available. At least they did originally. Now, it may all be gone by now. So you can call the number that's on the registration page.
Right.
And ask.
Check on that. But if not, Branson is less than 30 minutes away and plenty of hotel and motel spaces there. Bishop Alan DiDio, Vicki Joy Anderson, Dave Robbins, L.A. Marzullo, you'll be Skyping in. But if you want to attend, it's free. You just need to register in advance because they need to know how many seats, and there are fire code regulations. They can't overload the room. But if you can't be there, stream it on video, just $25, and information, registration at readynowexpo.com, readynowexpo.com. And the rest of our upcoming events, conferences, and of course our Israel tour, you can find all of that at gilberthouse.org. Go to the calendar and upcoming events section, or go to our app at gilberthouse.org/app. Look at the calendar section there.
And while you're at the website, go to /store.
Yes.
/store. And while we no longer ship physical items from our barn anymore, there are links to where you can get any of our books, our DVDs. You can stream those.
Yep.
You don't have to buy the DVD. You can just stream it online. So no shipping, no VAT, but also links to go to Light Hive Creations to get hats and mugs and T-shirts and all sorts of stuff where you can support those young music students that Kenny C teaches, help them to get the instruments that they can't afford.
Yeah. And that is a cause that we fully support. Both of us love music, loves to sing, Loves to sing. Yes, I loves to sing. Are we sure about that brain fog thing? Anyway.
What's my excuse?
I don't know. Tomorrow morning, you're fine. I feel like I'm like, where am I?
Hey, I had 2 hours sleep.
Well, so, okay, you got an excuse. Tomorrow morning, our weekly Bible study, and tomorrow evening, it's Iron and Myth number 38, as with special guest joining us, Dr. Aaron Judkins, because his co-author, Dr. Judd Burton, they'll be there with me, Brian Godawa, and Doug Van Dorn to talk about their book, Decoding Göbekli Tepe.
You know, 38's a really interesting number.
It is?
Ezekiel 38, Psalm 83, when
yes.
you turn it around.
That is, really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Had never thought about that.
Mm-hmm. It also adds up to 11. And 1111, if you take the two together, you get 1111.
Uh-huh.
Which is interesting. Also, 11 is one of those numbers that people were seeing over and over again.
Right, sure.
1111 or just 11s.
And there was that great a cappella tune that one guy did about 11, 11, 11, 11.
It's November 11 of 20.
Yeah, 11, 11 of 11, right. Well, that's what's coming up tomorrow. And again, you'll find all of that at our app, also available for Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV. And until next time, as the dogs are making it very clear they need to come in right now. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and for grace and glory that want inside. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @PID Radio, or the PID Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.